So a lot of our allies appear to be confused, including the Saudis. They say, well, look, we want you to end the war. In fact, they're part of the negotiations to end the war, but at the same time, we want you to escalate the war. Now, the Israelis are not confused. They want only escalation. But at the end of this story, I'm gonna tell you what the real goal of the Israelis is, because it wasn't clear until Joe Kent started to talk about it. The New York Times has now confirmed it. And this story is also gonna tell you why getting out of this war is going to be very, very difficult. The two sides are so far apart from each other. So an enormously important story. By the way, on Thursday's Young Turks program at 7 o'clock Eastern, we're gonna interview Joe Kent and talk to him about all this as well. But first, let's start with the theoretical peace negotiations. So our allies, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan had got together and in Pakistan to launched the negotiations, and they invited the Americans. The Americans were like, yes, great, wonderful, we'd love to do it. We got to get out of this war. One slight problem, they forgot to invite the Iranians. They're the other side of this war, so those negotiations are unlikely to go anywhere without them. So, of course, partly kidding, they didn't forget. They tried, and the Iranians largely said no. Now, there is talk of a backdoor channel to the Iranians. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the role of the Saudis and then get to, unfortunately, how getting out is near impossible. All right, so what do these allies want? Well, the Wall Street Journal explains, during the back channel discussions last week, Arab leaders were especially focused on opening the Strait of Hormuz. They called for the strait to be overseen by a neutral committee that would allow safe access by all ships. Now, that makes a lot of sense. Of course, they all want that. Their oil is blocked and can't get through the Strait of Hormuz. Their oil fields and gas fields are being bombed in the Gulf. So they have a very high incentive to get this thing wrapped up, but in a way that works for them, because there's a giant bogey for them that came after the war started. We're gonna get to that in a second. Wall Street Journal continues, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard replied that Iran should collect fees from transiting ships, just as Egypt does now with the Suez Canal. SpaghettiOs. So therein lies the rub, guys. Before we started the war, everybody could go through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, Iran blocked the Strait of Hormuz and no one can go through it unless they have permission from Iran, and some do. We've allowed some of the Chinese ships, etc., to get through. Why? Because we're worried about the price of oil. And so now Iran realizes after the war, wait a minute, apparently we totally run the Strait of Hormuz. Why don't we charge a toll like the Egyptians do at the Suez Canal? Now, the Saudis, the folks from the UAE and many other countries are like, whoa. Now we have to pay more to get our oil out and we have to give it to Iran, who is oftentimes our enemy? Yeah, maybe you shouldn't have started the war. Maybe you should have listened to some of us who said this is a disastrous idea. Now, to be fair to the Gulf countries, they didn't really want this war in the first place. But now that it has started, the Saudis have changed their minds about how to end it. Get to that in a second. Now, meanwhile, Qatar, Oman, France, UK, all saying, please, let's negotiate, okay? We gotta get out of here. This is terrible for the whole world, asterisks, except Israel, who loves it. So Wall Street Journal reported that Trump, after he was informed of these negotiations, and this is the part where it's a little dicey, and you could tell that the administration is happy about these leaks. I'll give you a quote from Caroline Levitt in a minute to prove that. But they say Trump's shift followed a series of closed-door discussions through Middle Eastern intermediaries that US officials gave them hope. An agreement to settle the conflict was possible. It also reflected a growing desire by Trump and some of his advisors to bring the war to a close. So now that's important in a couple of ways. Number one, our press is saying, and rightfully so, this is in a rare case, it might have been about the price of oil and the stock market. Only some in the press are saying that, but whoever it is, credit where credit is due, that's closer to correct, right? This is kind of a halfway leak from the administration to cover their own ass and to go, well, I mean, it wasn't just about manipulating the markets, and it's not because we're desperate. It's that Oman asked us to come to these negotiations, and we thought, Oman, how could we not go? And that's why Donald Trump gave this 5-day Buffer, all right, yeah, sure. But also it's important to note that the Americans do want this war to be over as quickly as possible. Not just the American people, that's already baked in, but now the administration realizing, oops, we screwed up here. So now let's go to the New York Times. They explain the Saudi motivations. They say Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has been pushing President Trump to continue its war against Iran, arguing that the US-Israeli military campaign presents a, quote, historic opportunity to remake the Middle East, sounding like the Israelis there. So wait a minute, how could the Saudis want to get to a peace deal but want to remake the Middle East and continue to go with Iran? Because at this point, the Saudis have realized, not the other Gulf countries that I mentioned, just the Saudis, yeah, it's too late. Now, if America leaves, we're at the mercy of Iran because they've been bombing us to no end, and we got barely any defenses. We're huffing and puffing about, oh, we got this big military, we could do a lot of damage, but we can't stop a damn thing. And the Strait of Hormuz is closed, and I got to pay taxes on it now. Now that we started, we got to go all the way in. So how do they want to remake the Middle East? Back to New York Times. Trump has at times seemed open to winding down the war, but Prince Mohammed has argued that would be a mistake. People briefed on the conversation said and has pressed for attacks against Iran's energy infrastructure to weaken the government in Iran. But wait, if you thought that was bad, and it is, get a load of the next sentence. Prince Mohammed has advocated ground operations in his conversations with Trump. Okay, so look, let's pause here. First of all, the Saudis would like us to expend American soldiers for their benefit and more American dollars for their benefit. Well, I have the same answer to them as I do to the Israelis. Go pound sand. Not my business, man. You have this war with Iran. Well, you say you didn't want it, you chose the wrong alliances. You chose Israel, and that's who the Saudis have been working with this whole time. UAE is totally in bed with Israel. Oh, it turns out Israel screwed you. Who could have seen that coming? Me and every analyst, but you schmucks didn't see that coming. We, on the other hand, try to help you guys. So if you're starting your own business, at some point you're gonna need a shop. We have shoptyt.com. Yeah, but really, who do we use? Who do we trust? Well, that's Shopify. Shopify makes everything simpler. It makes checkout way simpler with the big purple button that they have. That really has helped us a lot. And overall, they've been wonderfully responsive to us. We wouldn't do it with anybody else. So if you're gonna set up a shop for anything that you're doing online, make sure you're using Shopify. And right now, if you sign up, you only get $1 per month trial. $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/TYT. That's shopify.com/TYT. So now you want us to fix your problem with American ground troops? Hell no. Now, of course, our answer is going to be yes, because our leaders are corrupt and don't work for us at all. They work for the highest bidder. The Saudis will dangle some money in front of Trump, and the Israelis are dangling everything else in front of Trump. And Trump is like, help the Saudis and the Israelis. I love it. Like, where's America first? Okay, here's a simple idea, not talked in the press at all, because discussing it is anti-Semitic. Why don't we use Israeli troops for the ground invasion? Why don't we use, okay, is this Islamophobic? Why don't we use Saudi troops for the ground invasion? If the Saudis and the Israelis want ground troops so bad, why don't you use your own army? I mean, your armies that you constantly brag about. The Saudis are like, they better not let us get into the war. Okay, who's stopping you, big guy, okay? And the Israelis, IDF. Yeah, the IDF is fantastic at murdering women and children who are totally defenseless. But when it comes to Iran, they're like, no, that's a meat grinder. Send in the Americans. The schmuck Americans, we bought all their leaders, and we'll drive them into the meat grinder. And that is what's happening. Later in the show, you'll see the Israelis are talking about taking more land, including Lebanon and Syria, big parts of Lebanon and Syria, because they figure, well, America's gonna pay for it. Why not expand our empire? So now, let's go a little further into the disaster and why none of this is gonna work anyway, because we're not gonna be able to get out. Okay, so the Saudis are thinking, well, I don't wanna pay that tax, so you go in further. Now the Gulf states, Wall Street Journal says the Gulf states are unified in their anger with Iran, Arab officials said, but they're also angry at the realization they aren't able to exert much influence on the Trump administration's decisions despite being security partners and investing heavily in the relationship, they said. Oh, you schmucks thought that Trump was gonna prioritize you over the Israelis? Man, look, you have to remember, these are like 8th generation, 18th generation, like inter-family married royals. Okay, like they don't know anything in the world. They're like, oh golly gee, we gave a lot of money to Donald Trump. I bet the entire infrastructure of the United States that supports Israel will turn around immediately. God, you guys know nothing. Wall Street Journal continues, Arab states thought they had successfully lobbied the US to prevent such attacks. After an earlier Israeli strike on fuel depots in Tehran, that's earlier in this particular war, not the June war. Instead, the US allowed the strike on South Pars to go ahead after receiving advance notice from Israel, American and Israeli officials said. So they're like, well, Trump promised us, and we've given him, all this deals, and Kushner billions of dollars, his son-in-law, that he wouldn't bomb and he would keep the Israelis from bombing the oil fields, because if they do, or the gas fields, then the Iranians are gonna strike back and bomb our oil fields and gas fields. So a good thing we got Trump under control. And Trump's like, oh, the Israelis asked for something? Right away, sir. I'm so sorry, Benjamin Netanyahu, for not doing it earlier. So he's like, yes, let's bomb their fields. And the Saudis are like, what? You said you weren't gonna bomb the fields. Hey, schmucks in the Gulf, America works for Israel. How did you miss that? How bad is your intelligence? They bought 94% of our Congress. They've given Trump $337 million. Let alone the fact that our entire media is like, poor Israel, the victims of victims doing self-defense. You didn't notice any of that? That our media and our politicians are totally in the tank for Israel? They're so blind and ignorant. All right, so Trump seems prepared, they say, to pursue a deal. Telling reporters Monday that some Iranian leaders could usher in a better era of US-Iran relations. So this goes into the delusion of Donald Trump. He thinks, oh, we got this, man. They're gonna surrender any second. Here's what Trump said. We're dealing with some people that I find to be very reasonable, very solid. Maybe one of them will be exactly what we're looking for. Look at Venezuela, how well that's working out. See, the Israelis, and this is a story a little bit later in the program, convinced Trump that this was going to be easy. Oh, it's just going to be like Venezuela. You're going to go in and murder their top leaders, and then you're going to find someone very reasonable. His name is Reza Pahlavi Jr., the Shah, who works for Israel, right? So that plan didn't work. So then they're like, I don't know, find someone else. But wait, Israel has a plan B that is way worse, apparently. So, and Trump, the moron, believed it. And so he's constantly looking for, who's going to sell out? Who's going to sell out the regime and the entire Iranian people and be our puppet? Who is it? And our intelligence guys keep going back to him and go, there is no such thing. The Israelis made it up. Again, partly why Joe Kent came out. He's like, the Israelis are giving us intelligence that isn't close to true, okay? But schmuck Trump doesn't know that, so he's still waiting. So now wait, is all this a real leak? Like, is it like, oh my God, Wall Street Journal got it? Or did the Trump administration secretly want to leak this to say, oh, we're not doing market manipulation and the war's almost over and everyone's on our side. And look at the Saudis want to go in deeper too. So here's a quote from Caroline Levitt. There are sensitive diplomatic discussions and the US will not negotiate through the press. This is a fluid situation and speculation about the meetings should not be deemed as final until they are formally announced by the White House. Now, you might say, Cenk, why'd you even read that to me? That's like a standard PR thing. No, that is a non-denial. That means, oh, you want to run that story about how all of our allies want us to go deeper into the war and that we really had this wonderful peace deal, but it's all Iran's fault for not stepping up? Exactly what we want you to print? Sure, print it. I won't deny it, and maybe it'll be confirmed later. Okay, so when you read things like that, guys, you begin to get a sense of who's doing the leak. Who's bringing you this story? Because you have to know that motivation because the press doesn't let you know. They help scam you guys. So back to the Wall Street Journal, because now we're getting to the disaster. So now we're wondering, how's this war gonna end, right? Well, as a condition of any deal to end the war, they explain, Iran is demanding that the US and Israel pledge not to launch future attacks. Tehran is pushing for compensation for damages sustained during the war. So not only is Iran demanding a solid promise from America to never invade again, well, that promise from the Israelis would be hilarious. It wouldn't be worth the paper it's printed on. They'll attack the very next day. So, but for the Americans, we're unlikely to make that promise, but we can make a general promise. That's not the harder part. The harder part is we're gonna give Iran reparations for a war we started. Now there's logic in that, but do you think that the Americans are gonna do that? Yeah, like inconceivable. So what Iran is asking for, like, why don't you pay us for this dumbass war you started as reparations for your mistake, and we'll take an apology with it, is unlikely to come to fruition. But wait, there's only one group that's more unrealistic, and that's us. The US still wants what it sought from Iran before the war started: the dismantlement of Tehran's nuclear work, a suspension of its ballistic missile program, and a stop to its support for proxy militias. So this is the same load of totally undoable horse crap that Israel talked Trump into in the first place. Not only do we want to end all of their nuclear enrichment, let alone nuclear weapon program, let alone the fact that it doesn't exist and it's been destroyed, but they have to give up every single missile they have. And they have to give up their own foreign policy and let America and Israel run their foreign policy. Which country would agree to that, let alone a country that at this point, because of the massive damage to the markets the closing of the Strait of Hormuz is doing, they're kind of winning. Like yes, their military is destroyed, but apparently it's not destroyed enough for us to open up the Strait of Hormuz. And we're the ones looking for a peace deal, and Iran won't even show up to the peace negotiations. You think those guys with that amount of leverage are gonna go, oh yes, of course, sir, we will surrender completely to you and grovel at your feet, Benjamin Netanyahu, and give you all of our missiles and all of our guns and all of our children and whatever else you like? No, that means we are nowhere near the end of this war. The two sides, American side is as unreasonable as it has ever been. The Iranian side has become more unreasonable. Well, or they've gained more leverage. So no, if you hear stories about the wars almost coming to an end, they are utter garbage, not remotely true. No one's moved off their totally intractable positions. Now, while the Saudis want to open up the Strait of Hormuz as the rest of the world does, Israel has a different objective for this war, and it is devastating. Joe Kent actually talked about this in his interview with Tucker Carlson. He's gonna be again on the program on Thursday. Make sure you check that out right here on YouTube. But now the New York Times confirms what Joe Kent said. They say analysts say Israeli officials would probably view a failed Iranian state that is too caught up in internal turmoil to menace Israel as a win, while Saudi Arabia views a failed state in Iran as a grave and direct security threat. So on that one, the Saudis are right. If you have a failed state in Iran, it's gonna affect the whole region. You don't know who's gonna win. Maybe the most radical guy wins. And you don't know what they're gonna do with their military. They weren't offensive before, maybe they'll turn offensive now, right? So meanwhile, Israel goes, oh, we would have loved to have a puppet in there that reports directly to Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. But barring that, let's go with chaos, where we destroy everything and everyone is distracted while we take southern Lebanon, western Syria, we further decimate Iran and they have no defenses. They're in a bloody civil war where they're killing each other instead of defending the Palestinians. Perfect, a recipe for death, destruction, and chaos. And by the way, guys, that's the New York Times reporting Israel's objectives. That's not me saying, hey, I think. In fact, when I first heard Joe Kent say it, I thought, that seems uncharacteristically dumb of the Israelis, because in the long run, that's not gonna help them either. You don't want chaos in the Middle East, that's crazy. But then the Israelis are so radical now, and they're so wild-eyed, they can't see straight either. They're like, yes, we want anarchy in the Middle East. The Muslims kill each other, yes, right? Yeah, but you crazed radicals, you freaking terrorists, that kind of chaos winds up blowing up on everyone, including your beloved Israel. But they can't see straight, so they're rooting for chaos. And these are our allies? These are the guys we're doing the war for? And these are the guys who pretended Oh my God, we're so concerned about the Iranian people. We're worried the mullahs are gonna kill them. We have to go in and save the Iranian protesters. And after the war starts, the New York Times confesses Israel's plan is to have as many Iranians kill one another in a disastrous and deadly and catastrophic civil war. That's Israel in a nutshell for you guys. And that's the guys that we are following loyally, blindly, and cannot disagree with. So we're in for a world of hurt. This is nowhere near over. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.